Hello, everyone, and welcome again for another excitable episode of the Property XPerts Podcast and live video on YouTube. And this week, as every week, we've had a few highs and lows. Ben's actually still in Greece, so he's been managing all of the businesses remotely, and I'm sure he might even share about how he's been doing that. But we've got a jam-packed agenda for you today, and it's for podcast listeners, it's the 17th of May. And for today's session, we have the impact of YouTube Shorts. So if you're on YouTube and you're not utilizing YouTube Shorts, or even if you're not on YouTube at all, we'll be going into detail around that. Distressed deal discounts. Now, I was sent a distressed deal this week, which I was pulling apart the numbers, and it all boiled down to a very quick review that you can do just purely in the top of your head, which will hopefully save you time if you're looking at any distressed deals. We'll be talking about site marketing and what it costs. We'll be talking about UKREiiF, which myself and Rob from Central Suites, and also my brother, are going up to Leeds for a 3-day conference, and we'll be talking a little bit about that. Yield rates. If anyone's worked with commercial property, yield compression, whatever it may be, we are doing a section about what that is, where it is currently, which is obviously quite pivotal for valuations and even valuing sites before you've bought them. So make sure you hang around for that. We've got some book recommendations, I think 5 or 6 in total. 2 of Ben's I haven't actually read, so they're going on my book list. We'll be talking about our boardroom, what it involves, and we're actually closing out the last couple of spaces. So if you do want to join our boardroom, we'll be sharing a little bit more about that. And DAF, or DAF, it's American, so maybe DAF, funding. I don't know what it is, and we'll be talking about it towards the end of the session, and I'll be sharing my interpretation, and it'll be good to hear if anyone else out there has learned about them or works with them too. And then, of course, Q&A.
I have no idea. I have no idea what they are, so I'm interested to hear what they are. So neither of us know what it is.
I'm still in that camp. Yeah, I'd had an hour meeting earlier, and I still don't know what they are.
Nice.
And then, of course, as always, Q&A, any question answered as best we can. Brilliant. How's Greece, Ben?
Greece is good. Yeah, sadly leaving first thing in the morning. So only another, 12 hours really in Greece. But as you can see, I'm probably more red than I was when I first came out. Probably got a little bit of colour to me, but not a huge amount. It's been sunny the last 4 or 5 days, which is great. It started, didn't start very strong, but it's been very, very sunny the past few days. So it's been nice, except for my 3-year-old that just doesn't shut up. You try to lie around the pool and he's basically causing loads of noise for all the other people that are there wanting to enjoy their summer holidays. But anyway, such is life. So yeah, on to the impact of YouTube Shorts. I wanted to bring this up because I was doing a little bit of analysis this week in terms of how some of the sort of YouTube stuff that we've been doing is performing, both with XP and Aura. And if you're not on YouTube, you are missing a trick, I think, in any business, no matter what you're doing. I think given the fact that it's owned by Google, just to give you some insight into some of the things that I've done in the past and still work for me. I think 6 years ago, I did an impromptu video on one of our Aura sites about Thames Water build-over agreements, the very exciting topic of. But when somebody types in Thames Water build-over agreements into Google, my face pops up in the video section on Google with the video that I carried out about Thames Water build-over agreements. And that's been working for us for the last 6 years, bringing in traffic to the website and bringing in inquiries and leads and that sort of stuff. And, they're entwined. So the more stuff you can be pushing out on YouTube, the better you're going to rank on all of your websites if you're embedding those videos, etc. So I just wanted to have a look at the YouTube Shorts, because these are a relatively new thing. I think they've only been around for like less than a year. Obviously taking on from the Reels on Instagram, the TikToks, all these shorts. People have mind spaces, attention spans of goldfishes nowadays. So you've really got to be sharp, snappy, really hook people in with these short form contents. But I wanted to share the learnings over the last sort of month really of Aura pushing out a lot more shorts. And you can see the spikes on the video. For those that are listening on the podcast, effectively we've put out 1, 2, 3, 4 shorts in the last month, so 1 a week, and each of them have got between 400 and 600 views effectively. And if you look over at the graph on subscribers, each time we've put out a new short, we've got about a 1% conversion rate in terms of new subscribers. And shorts, they can go viral very quickly, and you'll get a lot more eyes on it. But the purple line at the bottom is returning viewers. So you can see there's a real solid baseline of returning viewers. So people who maybe already subscribed to the Aura YouTube channel. But really what's happening with getting new subscribers in, it's really being the shorts that are pushing that. So all the spikes in much bigger viewership, i.e., we've had 4,500 new viewers as opposed to 400 returning viewers on our shorts on YouTube, and that's led to 52 new subscribers. So it just has shows the massive impact that short form content can have on all of your channels. We've gained a lot more subscribers, we've gained a lot more viewers, a lot more eyeballs on our business because of these short, snappy, short form contents that we've been putting out there. So yeah, do not miss shorts, reels, and sadly to say it, TikTok as well, but it's a necessary evil nowadays.
Interestingly, speaking of the Ground Up podcast, obviously I'm engaged a lot with Ryan, who's one of the other sort of co-host, you could call him, but he's all about YouTube, social media, pushing branding, blah blah blah, and he's actually pushing a new page with different formats of shorts that feed through to the other page, so that it's a different. The way he explained it's like it's a different form of digestion. So
short
like
form, long form.
Yeah, well, actually, so we have long form videos and shorts on our Ground Up pod page, but then slightly longer topic forms on a different page that then drive traffic to the long form page.
So you've got 2 YouTube channels.
I don't know if he's done it yet, but this is what he wants to create. So it'll be like 10-minute discussions on interest rates, one video. It will be then, and it's all to do with working the system. Basically, is how do you grasp the listener, and then how do you retain the listener, and then where do you want the listener to end up, and then So interesting. Obviously, all fairly new stuff to me, as well as the shorts.
Yeah, I mean that's interesting because we, what we plan to do with with the Property Experts, show YouTube channel, we do want to get a mix of these shorts, the longer form lives, but then also we are in the background, and this is a bit of a spoiler alert, I guess, for people, but we are sort of interviewing video editors to take out some of these sections from the long form lives and package them up as their standalone 3 to 8, 10-minute long, shorter segments on the specific topics that we're talking about now. I don't really see the benefit of having the 2 different channels, albeit I follow a poker guy on YouTube, and he does have shorts by Spraggy. His name's Spraggy, so shorts by Spraggy, and that does seem to be getting a fair amount of traction. It does. Maybe that is just a different, wider audience that's just wants the short, snappy. Yeah. Here's one hand that I'm reviewing, or 30 seconds of whatever it is. But yeah, interesting.
Well, I mean, interestingly, some people might not watch the whole hour and 45-minute Ground Up recording. Whereas some people might only watch the shorts. So you've got 2 very different people. So I think what Ryan's getting to is to bring them on board for the educational parts, like 10 minutes on a certain topic, and drive them to then hopefully watch the longer stuff once they've sort of gotten used to us, I suppose. I'd be
interested to see how it goes. I mean, having a separate channel, I'm not really sure. I mean, yeah, I'll be interested to see what happens. If it works for you guys, then we should do it on ours as well. But we'll let. I did watch this week's episode, and Dorian was talking about the first time mover. I'll wait for Rye to be the first time mover, and then swoop in and learn all the mistakes that he's done. Interesting, cool, very good. Distressed discount deals for property people. What do you got for us?
this was kind of a blast from the past, really. The we buy any house, we buy any house fast, which is I feel like everyone that was in the property networking circles sort of 8 years ago had one of these domains that they would brag about at an event. But anyway, I actually got offered the most unique distress sale in the world. I won't go into too much detail around it because it's probably quite confidential. But it's basically a luxury home. Someone had exchanged on it and couldn't complete on it. And it's in a really cool place in England. And it seemed on the face of it like a really good opportunity because the exchange amount was quite surmountable. To put it into context, it was 400 grand. And the opportunity there was to try and structure a deal creatively to basically see if we could make a profit on it. So going into a situation where there's a problem, this problem was liquidity for the buyer to complete. And then the second problem was the buyer couldn't get leverage because he didn't have the sort of, you could call it credit and cash flow and assets and liability and all of the above, something else that they could take a charge on. So up shit creek without a paddle, really, which is where value can be created. And I was looking at the deal to see if there's anything that could be done because it's quite a lumpy asset. Even if you're getting something 400k less, that might be enough to move the needle to just trade a deal out like that.
What was the GDV or total? What was the purchase? Like that was the 400 grand was the what was
about
needed?
1.5 million.
Okay.
So the exchange amount was 400k, which was down. They couldn't complete. So there's some way that you can maybe take care of the old buyer that can't perform by giving him a little slice of the pie if you went ahead and bought it, and then leverage the site with probably a short-term lender. So the capital actually required to get the deal over the line is very thin, and then maybe trade it on or whatever it may be. But what this all boils down to, and the reason that I'm sharing this is because when I started out in property, so believe it or not, is over a decade ago now, you could make a turn on a property that was sort of 20% below market value or 20% below its existing value. If there's no other additional value add. So I'm talking about a finished asset. You can't extend it. It's got no planning scope. There's no further value add. The value is taking it from a distressed seller or even taking a position from a distressed buyer and putting it in a new place in the market. I don't believe that 20% discount is enough anymore. And I believe it needs to be more like 30% plus, maybe even 35%. And the reason that I'm sharing that is because if you're out there looking at houses that have no value add, and it's 25% below market value, I personally would move on from that or offer 35% discount on the value and then move on. Obviously, if there's upside and value add or planning or extension or splitting into flats or anything else on top of that, that can also weigh into the discount being a less of a discount. But that's my view of where it sits. And the drivers for that change is stamp duty, acquisition costs, legal costs, construction costs, all of those costs that are associated with getting something bought and sold, I just think are a larger chunk of the value. And as a result, I think if you're buying something at 28% below what it's worth, you'll probably end up making a little bit of money, but it's not really worth it. So 30% plus is where I think it needs to be. Just to find.
Do you think that's the same if you're buying cash and you're not having like holding costs, transactional or like legal costs and all that sort of extra stuff?
I think that if you are buying cash, you're in a great place to be buying these types of deals. I think that's a great position to be in. And I would actually say that I'm speaking from a SME developer-y, investor-y position. If you're a fully pledged outfit and you've got your own legal team and you've got bigger fund backing and things like that, it might be a bit different. You can probably be sharper. If you're a cash person, definitely you can obviously, you don't have finance costs as the same as everyone else, but I would say money costs something, even if it doesn't cost you anything. It's opportunity cost, and you should be charging your money out to yourself, even if you're buying something cash. So yes, that is cash. Maybe you could be a bit sharper if you sorry, that is with leveraging sites. So the acquisition fees, the arrangement fees of a lender. But if you are buying cash, you can definitely work on a finer margin than that. I'd probably imagine that it would probably be something like 25 to 22% is where you could sharpen that up. But equally, you should be charging for your finance, even if you're not.
I guess there's a slight, there's potentially another way of looking at it depending on the deal itself. But if you are buying something for 20% at a discount and you're able to refinance it, and if it's something that you want to hold, i.e. a HMO or a block of 4 flats or something, you're happy to rent out and leverage up to, let's say, 75% on the actual open market value, your actual cash requirement or equity requirement is a lot less. So
yeah, for sure. If you're holding, the source that brought this to me, I said, I'm your worst type of buyer. I'm like a tough crowd if you're a comedian, because I make 25-30% margin on assets. You kind of want someone that isn't in the property game, who is happy with a 5% discount to cover their acquisition costs. I now own an asset and it didn't cost me anything to buy it other than the money that's sat in the asset. So I actually said that. I was like, we need to make aggressive margins. Otherwise, what's the point? We're not buying this for fun or maybe making some money. This is our business. So I completely agree with that as well. If you want to hold something, or you are not a property professional day in, day out, and the only reason that you're doing it is to make a margin on that particular trade, you might be happy with the 10% discount, because it probably will cover your costs. It might not make you a profit if you have to exit, but it probably will cover your costs to acquire the building. So for sure, good point.
Nice. Cool. So on to point number 3. So site marketing. These are photos from our site in St Andrew's Court in Thame. Super excited to get these up. If you're listening on the podcast, effectively what we've done is create a branding package, so a site brand with Oliver James at Property Branding. We've got a site branding, and then we've also then had him graphically design a number of signs throughout the site. Now, this site is very good in terms of footfall. We get huge amounts of footfall traffic through the car park because it's one of the only routes from the main high street onto the road behind it. So we thought this was an opportune moment to get some permanent signage during the sales process of these of this development, to direct people to our micro website that we've created, which is another thing we're doing from a marketing perspective on this site. The site that we've got in front of you has a QR code for people to scan. It has a phone number for people to ring, and that goes through to our sales consultant, and a web domain to our micro website as well. So all of this, so we've got effectively 3 large signs on site. There are 2 pillars as you enter off the high street, which we've wrapped and branded on like vertical kind of pillars, columns. And we've actually got 2 flags being delivered on Friday this week. And all of that cost us about $2,500 for the actual supply and installation of the signs. I think Ollie's sort of site branding package was about £1,000. So branding the site and creating the graphics for all of these banners. So all in all, we're in about £3,500. But fundamentally, this signage will be up for the next year. The amount of footfall, I reckon we probably get, than the last time you were there, Jack, but I reckon we probably get 300 people maybe a day kind of walk in and out of that site. It's quite a lot. Obviously, the signage goes up now, people hopefully start talking, and word gets around before it actually releases on the market with the agent. So yeah, that's what we're doing on that site. I'd love to know what you guys are doing. Drop us a comment in the comment section below. That's what we're doing, and that's what it costs.
Yeah, I was just going to add a little hack actually for marketing and branding of sites. Like Ben said, this is actually a cut through for the public, whether we like that or not. And so loads of public end up walking through our sites. But there's actually a government website which can tell you how many cars go past a certain road every day, because they track the data for that, and they have done. So if you do want to learn, let's say you've got a site that is on the corner, or is on 2 roads or 3 roads, or you actually can have the opportunity to do some off-site marketing, so it's marketed somewhere near your site. You can actually look at roadtraffic.dft.gov.uk, selects the location, so the road that you're on, and there's certain points where they've done this data collection, and it actually tells you how many cars pass. I think it's daily. So for an example, the reason we use this is because we were looking at putting some hoarding up at our site in Spencer's Wood. The road outside is super active, and then we could actually look at the data of how many cars were driving past. But it's useful if you've got to make a decision between a couple of places to do that.
Nice. Like that. Jack's hacks. Cool. On to UKREiiF. I actually feel a bit gutted that I'm missing out on this. I've spoken to so many, I actually had somebody cancel a meeting with me on Tuesday this morning saying that he's now off to UKREiiF, so can we postpone? So I'm missing out a bit here.
I'll meet up with them.
It's a particle surveyor and developer from London. I'll send him your way. UKREiiF, what's it about?
Yeah, I don't think we need too long. I was trying to, so it's the UK's Real Estate Investment Infrastructure Forum is what it stands for. But just to touch on, I'm going with Rob, my brother, from Central Suites. We're going up with the Developers Club, like the big pack of hungry people that went to MIPIM. We're staying up for 3 nights, so excited to see what it's like. It's been coined the MIPIM of England, so I'll let you know how we get on there. And I'm also speaking on a panel actually on Thursday. So, I mean, first call out anyone there would like to meet up with me. Maybe some of our listeners that have been frequently tuning in, looking at my face, but I don't have a clue what you look like. It would be good to meet you. And thank you for following our channels. But also, if you would like to attend me talk on a panel about the role of SME developers in tackling the housing crisis, and I'm not going to hold back. I think the problem is I'm going to be pointing the finger at planning and government and funding and pretty much everything but ourselves, because we're absolutely perfect and we've never made a mistake in our lives. But it'll be good to see some familiar faces there. So reach out if you will be attending.
Nice. 10,000 plus attendees apparently. So sounds like a good event.
I'll try and get around that. I think I've got at least 10,000 business cards ready for next week.
At least they arrived this time. We ordered new business cards for MIPIM, and DPD lost our order, so at least we've got them this time round. Cool. Onto the boardroom, and we've been talking about this for months now, and we've had somebody else join this week, which is awesome. Can we say who it is? I guess we can. A guy called David.
Yeah.
A guy called David, who actually we've known for probably 4 or 5 years now. And has been talking about doing a few things with us. Reached out, I think, a couple of months ago to have a chat about what we've been up to and what the boardroom's all about, and has now signed up to get involved. We've sent the package over to about 3 people this week, one of which being one of my old employees from Aura, who's now doing a lot of investment and development herself. And I'm hopeful that she'll join as well. But it's an opportunity for property developers or people that maybe done a couple of flips, a few HMOs, and want to kind of take their property lives to the next level and get stuck into more bigger developments where you're potentially working on 7 and 8 figure type GDV developments, and surrounding yourself with people that are wanting to grow to that level and share knowledge, share their contacts, their black books, and share their insight, really. It's a real diverse mix. We've got quantity surveyors, obviously, solicitors, we've got us, we've got, who else have we got?
Big land agent, lady in commercial, we've got, you mentioned old solicitor.
Real mixed bag. Yeah, real mixed bag. But it's a great room to be in, and we'd love to see you part of it. So do reach out if you are interested in joining. Comment boardroom below, and we'll get Christina to send across the package. Cool. Yield rates. So what are they and where are they now? Knight Frank released this yield guide back in March 2024. So it's only 4 to 6 weeks old now. So the most current data that we really have on yields. Jack, could you give a bit of a quick rundown, kind of what they are and why they're relevant, whilst I bring up a another screen.
Yeah, Ben, make sure you're focusing because I have a really interesting fact about the word yield.
Cool.
So the word yield actually originated from what a farmer would yield from their field. So I'm going to use that in context because it's very, very relevant. When you're buying a commercial property, you are not buying a pound per square foot value or necessarily looking at a comparable down the road. That is relevant, but you actually tend to be buying the income if it's let out. So what I mean by that is if you have a field and you yield 10 crops out of 100, that's a 10% yield on your crops. And someone might buy your field for the 10% output that it's producing as a yield. Obviously, property values can change and the tenant can change, or you could get a better tenant in there, the yield's a bit stronger. Or you might have a more valuable plant, which is the tenant. But looking more of that into a property, when you're buying a commercial asset, if you've got a £1 million property that's bringing in £100,000 per year, and you've paid £1 billion for it, you've bought that at a 10% yield. Where this is really relevant is the commercial markets are really cyclical. And what I mean by cyclical is the yields change, they move around. And there's a few movers that influence where the yield is at from a asset, location, tenant and lease perspective. So what I mean by that is asset, what type of asset is it? Is it a grade 2 listed property in Westminster and it's an absolute showstopper? Or is it a big shed that's been built in Scunthorpe and is probably going to blow over in the wind next year because it's not been up too long? That's a value.
No disrespect to Scunthorpe.
No disrespect to Scunthorpe. You've then got the tenants, which is what is the strength of the covenant of the tenant? So how reliable is that tenant on paying when they're due? So technically, not only is a lender or when a buyer putting faith in the commercial asset as a building, they're also putting faith on the balance sheet, the cash flow, the sustainability of that business that's renting the building to produce that cash flow. So another is the tenant. Location is obviously key because the closer you are to affluent areas or centralized areas, the better the yield play is. For an example, if you had the exact same building type, the exact same tenant, but one was in Zone 1 London and one was in Zone 6 London, there should be a price difference because obviously if you're in the thick of it, that should be a more valuable income. And then last but not least is the lease. The details and the quality of the lease are very important. So if you've got, for example, let's say you've got Lloyds Bank, who are one of the best covenants that you could possibly have, renting a building off you, but the lease ends in a year, then it's obviously not as valuable as if you had a lease ending in 20 years. So that's a bit about the yield moving based on what I would call the micro influences, and then the macro influences. So where the market is, what debt costs, what buyers are out there in the moment, what the activity is, what the positivity is in the market. And that sort of peaks and troughs with what people are trying to do to get in position. So to put that in a bit of perspective, since interest rates have changed, so if you're actually buying a commercial building at the moment, you're really looking at a high street lender to get to like 7 to 8%. So it's going to be really difficult to sell a site that's not a trophy asset or in central London for less than that value, because essentially you're not going to make a cash flow margin if you have a mortgage and you leverage that mortgage. So it pushes a lot of people that are raising debt against sites out of the market, which makes it easier for people that don't have debt in the market, which softens the compression of the yields. The last thing that I will add, which I haven't added, so we talked about micro influences and macro influences that are more economical, is the final one is mass and size. Quite frequently, if you're a pension fund or you're a bigger firm that are buying bigger assets and you can conglomerate assets, so you only get out of bed for £1 billion, you might compress the yield even further because you're buying at mass. So you're basically warranting that it's spending less time buying a bigger pool of assets. And what I mean by that is if you bought, for an example, one House of Fraser, or you bought 10, because you're buying 10, you get a bulk aggressive taxes. So because you're putting the same amount of time into that transaction, you might buy for less yield, which is potentially more for the seller. But just because it's a little bit easier for you to do that 10 transaction as it is 10 times one transaction, if that makes sense. I don't know if I explained that last part very well, but hopefully that's a good indication.
No, I think that was really good. I think this is where on our stacks, when we're appraising mixed use sites, this is always the bit that's just such a big unknown in terms of, is our commercial asset going to be worth a 7% yield or a 10% yield? And that has implications based on what Jack just talked about in terms of the strength of the covenant, the length of the lease, and location and all that sort of stuff. But it is a big variable, but stripping it all the way back to kind of basics, because I know when we were first looking at our social portfolio, I didn't really understand the yield market or kind of how it worked. But fundamentally, the lower the yield, the higher the value. So if you've got a 5%, if you're selling income at a 5% yield, that's effectively a 20 times multiplier on the income. Whereas if you've got a 10% yield, that's only a 10 times multiple of the income. So that you want a lower yield when you're selling something or valuing something, and generally a higher yield when you're buying something, because effectively you're buying it for a lower value, basically. But the Knight Frank thing that you can see on screen, anyone that wants this, just let us know and we can email it across to you. It's the yield guide from March 2024. I think they release these every 6 months, just to give an update on where the market's at. You can see in the sort of high street retail section at the top, a Bond Street, Oxford Street type yield could be anywhere between 3 to 4.5% yield, which is obviously sort of super low. Prime real estate. Then prime towns like Oxford, Cambridge, Winchester is 7% yield at the moment. Regional cities like Manchester and Birmingham, 7.25. And then your sort of good secondary locations. Now, it says Truro, Leamington Spa, Colchester. I don't really know how good those locations are, but Knight Frank seem to deem that it's about a 10% yield. So those locations will also have like micro locations as well, where it's that's the town itself, but actually there might be secondary and tertiary locations within those towns that also may vary from a 9 to 12% yield, whatever it may be. But this guide basically looks at all the different sectors. You've got high street retail, shopping centres, out of town stuff, leisure, supermarkets. The biggest thing I think would be useful for most people listening to this that are doing sort of PD conversions, etc. You can see offices over the last even month, or I guess sort of 6 months. There's a real negative sentiment in terms of the value of those offices. There's obviously less demand since COVID. Most people are moving out of town or working from home, etc., and really shrinking down the amount of office space they want. But that's a good opportunity for us guys, because PD rights have just changed. It's become a lot easier now to convert offices of any size. The limits have now been changed to basically be unlimited, and they don't have to be vacant anymore. You can submit a PD application prior approval to convert an office into residential C3 use with tenants still in situ. So this, I guess, is a good thing in that the yield market for offices has dropped off the charts. When you're looking at Southeast business parks, what's this, 10.5 to 12.5% yield. Secondary regional cities, 11%. You're talking double-digit yields here for offices, which if you're buying on that yield but converting it to resi, there could be a huge uplift for you in terms of value with those. And effectively, that is what most people are looking for at the moment, isn't it? Commercial conversions, offices into resi. We've got a number of them in our pipeline at the moment, but they're not easy to find. So if you've got any questions about that, do drop them in the comments below. It's a really interesting thing to look at every now and again, every 6 months, just recapping on where the sort of wider market is from one of the big agents in the UK. Knight Frank.
So I just wanted to help our listeners actually arrive at values if they weren't sure how to get to the yield values, if that makes sense. So if you've got, for an example, you're looking at buying a commercial property and it's vacant, and let's say it's in a town centre of Reading, it's just coincidentally close to where we've bought stuff that's commercial. The way that you work out the yields is you look at comparable buildings and what they let out for per square foot. So in Reading, I know that an office will probably go for £20 average for a basic 2,000 square foot office. Once you then work out that rent that is going to be paid per annum on that building, you then look at something like this to get a steer on the yield values or the compression that this market gets. I would also recommend speaking to local agents and saying, what do you think I could sell this office income for? And let's say it's 8% for an example. Then you just divide the value of rents by 8%, and that gives you your value of your building. It's obviously super important if you're buying a site that doesn't have planning or is commercial, and you need a valuation on its existing use to understand that existing use, because a bank will only leverage without any planning in place against its existing use, so vacant possession, existing use. And another thing that I wanted to touch on, which Ben will probably find interesting and listeners might, is I spoke to an agent about Tame, Ben, our building, about yield, about what we would sell at. We know what rent we're getting. We've re-geared 3 leases. We've renewed them. Well, actually 2. I don't know why I said 3. And we know what rent we're getting in that building. And I was talking to an agent about what sort of yields what are warranted in the market, because they do move. You know, pound per square foot values can change, but they're probably well, because they're living accommodation and roofs over people's heads, they're less cyclical in the economic market, and the drivers of that value is very, very, very different. You know, it's families that want to move home and so on. And he sort of said probably 8.5%, no lower, which was a shock to me, because I thought a building in that location with such a good covenant would probably be a lot less. And the sort of chat I had with it, and I was very candid with the agent, and I know them super well, so I could be, is I kind of said, I reckon I can get a better valuation than a sale price. So I think I could get a better red book for a revaluation than selling it at 8.5%. So why wouldn't I just get a 7.5% valuation, which is where I think it probably would come in? And that percent difference is probably 200k that we'd be leaving on the table just to leave in the asset. Yeah, we might have overvalued it marginally against where the market's at, but that's where I thought it would be, and it did kind of sway me a little bit more to hold the site. You know, there's profit in it regardless whether we hold it or sell it. Well, equity if we hold it, but it just made me think. I think weirdly that the valuation market is slightly stronger than the actual sales market at the moment. So worth considering if you've got a commercial site that you are selling. Make sure that you're not just selling it for the sake of selling it. If you think you can get a better yield play valuation on a valuation, you might be that loss that you're making against a better market. You're just holding as equity and leveraging up slightly higher so that you get more out to go and play with elsewhere in another deal. But that's how we look at it.
Nice. And I don't know what I've just done there. Playing around with things. Close. Yeah. Okay. One thing that I wanted to also touch on, because there was an interesting table in this yield thing, all about Bank of England base rate, SONIA swap rates, gilts, all this sort of stuff. And just wanted to touch on for a couple of minutes actually how they work. And I think most people, certainly people that aren't in property, when they think about mortgage rates, and they've obviously gone up significantly over the last year or so, and people think, oh my God, they're going to put the Bank of England base rate up again. It's going to mean that our mortgages are going to go up, blah, blah, blah. The mortgage rates typically aren't linked to the Bank of England base rate. They're more interested in the SONIA swap rate, which you can see on the screen in front of you. So that's essentially what the banks are buying their money in at, and then therefore, lending it. So if they're buying it at a higher rate, obviously their rates to us are going to have to increase. So what you should really be following more is the SONIA swap rate. And it says here in March 2024, it was just under 4%. And you can see the trend from January, February to March was that actually in January, things were a little rosier in terms of SONIA swap rates. They were down at 3.62%. And then in Feb, 3.85%. In March, 3.96%. Now I've just looked again at the rate, and it's pretty much stayed at the 3.96%. So the lower that figure, effectively the lower the mortgage rates and the debt rates that you can get on the market are likely to be. So what you want to be seeing is that figure start to come down, which normally indicates that mortgage rates and mortgage lenders will review their figures, and hopefully a new lower rate start to come out. Now, what I said in our developer club last week when we were talking about rates and what's going to happen to them, I actually, everyone of course wants it back to where it was 2 years ago, where it's like the lowest. We've had it so good for so long. I actually would just prefer a bit of stability. Like I don't really want them to go down. I don't want them to go up. I just want people to understand or think that nothing is going to change and therefore do something. Because the biggest impact on us is just a stagnant market where people are waiting for things to happen. There's no urgency in the market at the moment. And because there's been so much volatility, people are sitting on their hands. Whereas if they knew they're staying at this rate, the Bank of England base rate isn't going up, the SONIA swap rates aren't going anywhere, they're just stabilizing. I think people would be more inclined to spend the money, move house, buy that rental property, and not worry about so much where the interest rates are going, basically. So I would just like a little bit of stability.
Do you want my analogy on SONIA?
Yeah.
I love an analogy. For the listeners out there, the SONIA is wholesale and the banks lending to you is the marketplace. So it's a bit like if you're you're selling bananas on a stall, where do you buy your stock from? The wholesale, which is SONIA. So it's a step ahead of where the things are going and where anticipating prices, because if SONIA changes, so does everyone below it. I want to have a Jack's analogy.
Good. Like it. Love the analogies. Cool. Book recommendations. So I've hidden these on the screen, so there'll be a surprise as we go through them and I click the buttons. But I think I'm up first. So we thought we'd give a couple of book recommendations. We haven't done this for a while. I think maybe some of them are the same as what we've done previously. But Jack said that 2 of mine are ones that he hasn't actually read. So that's good. That's one good reason to do this. So book recommendations, you should constantly be wanting to learn and listen to other people's stories and improve yourself and your personal development. So hopefully some of these books help people. The first one, which is mine, is 24 Assets from Daniel Priestley. He's got a plethora of books, oversubscribed, Key Person of Influence, Entrepreneur's Revolution. They're all amazing books, but I think in this digital world, 24 Assets was great, and I think it helped me think with XP Survey, certainly, how we can create a digital, scalable, valuable and fun business that will thrive in a fast changing world. And that's the tagline on the book. And that's what the book's all about, basically, creating a digital footprint of your business, making people find you, creating lead magnets, driving people through those funnels. And I think it is an absolute must read for any business owner nowadays. On to Jack's first recommendation, Your Life, Your Legacy. This is one that I've not read.
You haven't? Oh,
no,
so,
I haven't.
This was the first thing my mentor, shout out to Nick, recommended that I did was do my psychometric testing and read this book. And it basically, psychometric testing is understanding you as an individual. So I think before you start trying to analyze your P&L of your business, your marketing of your business, and your team and your business, and all of those nice things that are in the company, understand yourself first and how you operate as an individual. This book has everyone's personality profile laid out, so you'll do the test, or you could kind of work out. I can tell what type of profile someone is before I've heard what test results they got, because you can kind of see the flavor of it. But it goes through everyone that's super successful, from celebrities to entrepreneurs to business owners to billionaires, and why they're successful in the way that they became successful, because it complements their character and their attributes to how they perform in certain areas where they're weaker in certain areas. So for an example, Warren Buffett is a Lord profile, so he's very good at analytics, long-term positions. He takes a lot of time to think about things, whereas on the flip side, Richard Branson is more of a star, so he took himself as the brand, and would go into a situation and use his sort of charisma, or as what the kids call it now, Riz, to drive that business and the concept forward. I can see Ben cringing there. Did you not hear about the Riz craze?
No, I'm too old for Riz.
Full of Riz. But it's great, because what it did for me is, I think one thing that I'm without getting too deep here, one thing I really struggled with in school is I was very different to everyone that was really smart, book smart. And I sort of struggled to see headway. But when I read this book as an adult, I was like, everything makes so much sense. Everyone's just unique in their own ways. And the sooner you understand yourself, the more you're going to get out of it, and yourself and life and your team and your productivity, and making sure that you're in the right place in your company or your work or whatever it may be. But it's written by Roger Hamilton. He's a massive believer in wealth dynamics, and I don't think the testing costs too much. I'm sure if you did the test, you're going to get upsold some like Discovery Day in central London where he comes and talks. But he is a billionaire, and I did get to meet him, so it's pretty cool.
Yeah, there is. I mean, we went to one of his presentations, lecture things a couple of years ago, didn't we? It is, it's lots of successful business owners up on the stage giving their advice, and if you take one or two golden nuggets away from those types of things, I think they're worth it. I actually didn't realize I've done the wealth dynamics, but I didn't realize this was his book, and this is kind of where it all starts. So yeah, I'll get this on the Audible list and download it, and maybe this is one for the airplane ride tomorrow home. But you're a star creator, aren't you?
I'm a creator mechanic, I think, on my top two.
Yeah, I think we were basically the same. Creator mechanic star. Type vibes. This was probably 6 or 7 years ago that I did it. I'd be interested to see if maybe it's changed, and things that interested me then, or the way I operate.
Christina's got to watch this back. Christina, can you make sure Ben and I do a new personality test?
Yeah, I think that would be really useful, actually. We'll see. Well, maybe we'll talk about it next week if we've managed to do it. Cool, very good. Yeah, listen to that one or read it. Second was something I read. To be honest, I probably read this over a year ago, but it stood out when I was looking through my Audible. Act Like a Leader, Think Like a Leader by Herminia Ibarra. But essentially, when you start a business or multiple businesses, people rely on you. You are the head of that business. You are the driving force, the vision. And if you don't have everyone with you in that journey, you're not going to go as fast and as far as you should. So this book is all about understanding people, how to work with different people, different types of personalities, how to think in a way that you might not have thought before in terms of how you think a leader should drive things forward, or their mindset, mentalities. I just thought it was a really sort of inspirational book that made me think about, it's not necessarily always the big things that you do within your business. Sometimes it is literally just the little things with individuals. By understanding, again, I guess it comes back to your life, your legacy, and the different ways people think, like understanding how different people in your team think, and speaking to them in their way and understanding what their way is, and therefore getting the best out of them, like any good leader would do. So yeah, it's for any business owner, any entrepreneur, I think if you want to build a team, this book is a really good read. Cool. This is one of my favorite ones, but it's on your list. So Built to Sell.
I actually rushed to get it on here because I knew that you would have whacked it on there.
It was, one of my faves.
Yeah, so this book's called Built to Sell by John Warrillow. One of the reasons that I absolutely love this book, it's basically telling a story of a business that is very demanding for the business owner, and how a mentor adapts the business to make it extremely self-sufficient, fluid, and saleable. And I won't ruin what happens at the end, but it's a really good book to read because it makes you think about a business as a function, and you are just there to help where needed. But realistically, I've always heard the phrase that a good business runs without you, but a great business grows without you. So that sort of really opened my eyes in that context, and it's a really interesting read. Quite a short one as well, so you can bosh it out quite quickly. But the value return you're getting, the ROI is phenomenal.
Yeah, I really second that. It's a book I think I read at the very start of probably six years ago, like probably a year into sort of starting Aura and just getting into XP. And any business you start, you should think with the end in mind. That's the way that you build it from day one should be setting up the systems, the processes, looking at what the valuation of the business may be when it's finished, and kind of reverse engineering how to get there, and building those systems and processes in place to get there. So yeah, I love it. I think it's a great book. Cool. It's kind of very similar, really, if you're building something to sell, at some point you're going to go through the scaling up phase. So with a business, you get a bit of a potentially an S curve, and actually with like tech startups, you often get what's called a J curve. So you start here, you lose a shitload of money building and getting momentum, and then at the when you hit the bottom of that J curve, it's exponential kind of growth there afterwards. Scaling up is built off of the first book was actually called The Rockefeller Habits, which was many decades old, decades or centuries, decades, and this was like the new remake of it, a couple of years ago, and it's all about how few companies make it and why the rest don't, and it's how to again build the teams and the systems and the processes that you need to grow to the next level, get yourself out of Death Valley, and actually create a cash flowing profitable business that works without you, which I guess is very similar to the Built to Sell book as well. But Scaling Up by Vern Harnish is my third choice.
Cool. Last but not least, actually another team focused one, similar to what it sounds like, Acts Like a Leader and Think Like a Leader, is Who Not How by Dan Sullivan. Was it you that recommended I read this book? I can't remember.
Yeah, I think so.
But anyway, it's just a really good management, thought processing, team leading. I mean, it does what it says on the tin, where you think a little bit more about who, not how, because a lot of our businesses, especially the property business, I sometimes feel that we're just definitely not for our staff. So if any of our staff are watching this, don't take offense to this, but a bit of a puppet master for like all of the professionals and pulling everything together. And you do have to be thinking, I'm always thinking about, doing my bit so that I'm waiting on them rather than them waiting on me. And it's all about how you structure that and buy yourself a bit more time. I actually bought this book for my friend George Biffin, who runs a food van, and I think it massively helped him as well. And to put that into context, he's cooking every day in a kitchen with two people, whereas we're running a very, very different multitude of businesses. And I think whatever level you're at in your business, it's super useful to read Who Not How.
Yeah, I think when you're a startup or any business, when it's just you tend to take on so much yourselves. And I see a lot of small business owners that are stuck in that vicious cycle of can't maybe afford to bring someone in to take this off me. But fundamentally, delegation is such an art form, and that's what a lot of this book is about. It's as soon as an email comes in, it's not how do I do this? It's who do I get to do it for me? And when you start to grow businesses and you have a team, you have to learn. Like I see it as kind of slopey shoulders. Like something comes in and right, who do I get to do this? Who do I get to do that? Who do I get to do that? And you have to do it if you want to grow, because your focus as the leader of the business should be to focus on the key priorities of income, bringing income in, selling things, and the operations of the team should then follow with other people and the team that you've built around you. So another great book. Cool. Just a shout out to us, I guess, on the Property XPerts podcast. If you are listening, please do rate us. It does go a long way in terms of the algorithm and showing it to other people. And on that note, if you do get value from this regularly, if you could share it within one of your WhatsApp groups, share it with just one person that you think would get value from this, would be very appreciative, because it does go a long way. And to that effect, I snuck this in there without Jack really seeing, but I listened to episode 3 of the Ground Up podcast this morning, live by the pool. Jack's the co-host in amongst Stuart Wyeth, Dorian Payne, and Ryan Beaumont. They're doing £250 million worth of developments between them. Granted, a lot of that's Dorian, but we've got a fair chunk of it too. But it's a real kind of candid conversation between 4 amazing business owners that are doing great things, that built their own businesses from scratch and have high aspirations. So they're quite long, between an hour and 2 hours long, but it's all it's if you're listening to it on 2 times speed, that's you can speed it up and get through it faster. But some really useful insights in there, some great anecdotes, some great stories, and some great kind of finger on the pulse type news reviews as well, on things that are happening in the world and things that affect you as a property developer and a business owner. So if you're not subscribed, do head over to Ground Up Pod to see how those guys are doing it, and they go a little bit more in depth into some of the topics that we necessarily do on this podcast. But it's definitely on my list of weekly listens nowadays. Cool. DAF funds. Anyone heard of them? Let us know. End of podcast.
I mean,
what is it?
I still don't really know what it is, but I'll give it a go of explaining. So Ben's in Greece, he obviously couldn't do this, but I mean, maybe with the modern way of the world, I met with a DAF funder this morning in London, central London. We've been back and forth with various different things, and I'll explain roughly what I believe a DAF fund is, and then I will let you guys, maybe comment or reach out to me to see if you interpret it the same. But it's a predominantly American-based theory, and essentially it's where ultra high net worth and super successful businesses put funds. They donate funds to a fund called a DAF fund, and the predominant reason that they're incentivized to do it is for two reasons. One is to donate into a philanthropic environment, so that they are making an impact with their investment. And two is because they get a government-led, I believe it's ISI or ISR, which is some sort of American governing body, a bit like the FCA or maybe even HMRC. They get a big tax relief. I believe it's 60, don't count me for this, I'm not tax advisor, blah, blah, all that nice stuff. I think 62 or 67% tax relief that they get on that investment to offset what tax they pay on their profits in their business. So it's when people make super heavy money and they don't know what to do with it to some degree, almost can't spend it if they tried, and they want to give back in a philanthropic way and to help and make impact. So it's actually called a DAF fund, but it's also called in the UK a impact fund. If any of you know, we've been building an impact portfolio in Croydon, which is social housing, and the main reason that we're having this conversation with this fund is, one, because we could do with recapitalizing that portfolio from a funding perspective, from an equity perspective. But the main reason that my attention was really drawn to this, and I'm kind of in a position where I don't know if it's too good to be true or not, is if you hit credentials for impact. So what I mean by that is if you focus on building communities or solving a housing problem or building better equality in the public, or solving a problem for less fortunate people in the world, that is an impact category that they have within this impact fund. I think there's 16 categories, and what I'm led to believe for this particular fund that we're currently furthering conversations with and trying to understand what's what and whether it's going to work for us and also whether it's real, is they offset the drawdown. So let's say you draw down 10 million quid. For every criteria that you hit and provide that impact change and qualify for that, and apparently you might need a consultant as a third party to review you and report back to the fund, you get that you get 20% of your drawdown as a grant. So essentially, if you borrowed 10 million over a 5-year period and you hit the impact criteria for 5 elements, your whole 10 million becomes a grant and you don't need to pay it back, because the donor that's originally put the funds in is predominantly doing it to create an impact and to realize the tax break and to maybe talk about their philanthropic activities this year, and that is how the fund works. And it sounds too good to be true to me, but you never know. I mean, it's worth a conversation, I would say. We're not trying to borrow 10 million, a lot less than that, maybe 6, to see how we get on.
Nice. Okay. Yeah, I've never really heard of that. I've seen the emails banging around, but yeah, it'd be interesting to discuss it more. But if anyone has done this before or knows more about it, a DAF fund, donor advised fund, we'd love to hear from you. Let us know your stories. Is it too good to be true, or should we be diving headfirst into it? Let us know.
Yeah, I mean, one of the things I did ask for was a reference, someone that's already drawn down as a real person that can. But yeah, reaching out there to anyone that's heard of these or are we walking? I mean, we're obviously going to de-risk this before we do anything, like we do all of our development deals. But interested to know if there's anyone out there that's been privy to these.
Nice. Cool. We've just ticked over the hour mark for something that we thought was actually going to be quite a short one based on the number of topics, but it allowed us to go a bit deeper into some of those, which is cool. But if you listened in, thanks very much. Do drop a like, subscribe, comment below. If you enjoyed this, follow us on all our relevant social media channels, and hopefully we will see you next Friday at 5 p.m. Cheers, everyone.